Georgian real estate is very interesting. However, here is the main issue with buying real estate and how you can get around it as a foreigner. Of course, if you watch until the end, I will be going over step by step how exactly to get around a lot of the restrictions that Georgia has and laws in place, which, of course, are legal to get around as the institutions themselves are the ones doing it. Hello and welcome back to the Traveling Report. Today I wanted to go over Georgian real estate, and I was recently at a plot of land near Tbilisi Lake, between Tbilisi Lake and Tbilisi Hills, which, of course, if you don't know Tbilisi Hills, it is the most expensive area of Georgia. And when you're looking at these sorts of deals and these sorts of areas, typically they are invariably tied to what is called agricultural land plots, not residential. And residential is required to be bought if you are a foreigner. Of course, for many Georgians, they don't want to have to deal with governments. They don't want to have to reclassify that land. And so, under the law of Georgia at present, you cannot buy any such land that is agricultural if you are a foreigner. Now, it used to be easier, especially under Saakashvili. You could straight up buy agricultural lands, and there was no issue with that. However, now there is an issue with that. But, of course, what are the steps you can take to protect yourself against this? First of all, look up the Cadastral code. Everything in Georgia is now online, and if you look up the Cadastral code, you can learn how it is classified. If it is classified as residential already, then of course you can buy it as a foreigner. And realistically, this first step is what the vast majority of foreigners do. You can also get it reclassified, which, depending on the municipality, it's much easier, for instance, in Kutaisi than it is in Tbilisi, or places where you can have a direct line to the government. But with that, of course, buying reclassified land is totally legal, utilized a lot. And many people I know personally have reclassified lands and then gotten citizenship later and started to buy agricultural lands, which, of course, again, is entirely legal. It's entirely recognized. Now, the next part that you'll want to look at is whether or not it has a clean title. If it is loaned against, it is not a clean title. And realistically, you don't want to deal with a property with a loan on it. You can verify this at many banks. They will typically tell you whether or not it's loaned against. They do have to, of course, know you and know, your situation. If they know your situation, of course, they will loan against, or they will tell you whether there's a loan against the apartments or property or land. However, also something that is perhaps good news for you is reclassified lands. You cannot be loaned against a agricultural plot of land. It's illegal for a bank to loan against agricultural land. So what do they do instead? They reclassify it, and that can be utilized as loan collateral. So, of course, getting appraised and so forth is done through many different avenues, but of course I can go into more detail on how to get a loan against a property or a mortgage later on. If you are at all interested in that, feel free to click the subscribe button down below. That said, realistically, the next thing you should look at, and the following thing you should look at, is whether or not the owner matches the ID. And it should be directly related, because if that person somehow changed their name, or they don't have full rights to the property, whatever else, and it is registered in the system that way, of course, you will invariably get scammed. That says, additionally, if you are looking for a positive return on investment, you should be looking for plots of land that don't have large amounts of zoning restrictions, or no zoning restrictions, which many plots of land have no zoning restrictions. So, of course, as a foreigner in Georgia, it is more complicated to get land. And under the Constitution, now there is a section where they flat out say agricultural lands can't be bought by foreigners. What they classify as a foreigner is, of course, someone who was not born here and does not have citizenship. So if you were born here and you have citizenship, you can, or even if you weren't born here and you have citizenship, you can buy agricultural lands. That said, additionally, there is a company registration option where if you have a 51% ownership stake with a Georgian, you can become a landowner. I plan to speak with my colleagues here in Georgia and ask further about the potential of them, having a 51% holding of land. And if you're at all interested in that, feel free to reach out, book a call. Of course, I can help you with creating that structure. That said, of course, you have to be careful with Georgian real estate, as it is the Wild West of the Caucasus, and there's not many regulations. And so, of course, with anything, you should double check. Many times, you should have a lawyer present, and you should be willing and able to adapt your plans. Again, with that said, I think that there is interesting opportunities here in Georgia still. However, it's getting increasingly hard to find them. So if you need help finding opportunities or growing your business here in Georgia, feel free to reach out, book a call, one-on-one, absolutely free for 15 minutes, down in the Calendly link below. If you liked this video, feel free to like it. If you really liked this video, feel free to share it with your friends. This has been the Traveling Report, signing off.